Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
This happened when I was 19, so about 5 years ago. I was walking home from a friend's house one morning and had my headphones in. He lived a bit out of town. We lived in a small town of 4,000 people. As I was walking, I turned the corner to get onto the main road. I had a big ditch to the left of me and a row of run-down houses to the right. Then I see two dogs running towards me. I'm used to dogs running around here and looking for treats or to get bits. Anyways, one dog quits running while the other, a boxer breed, runs towards me and bites my ankle. He latches down hard. I scream out in pain. Then he drags me down into the ditch. I follow my back, look up and see this dog dive at my face. I kick him in the face and jump up. There is a car honking at me that is trying to get me to get in. I crawl up the ditch, the dog bites my leg again, kick it, then get to the car. The dog jumps up at me and I block it with my arm. Now I have one bloody leg, a one scratched up arm that is bleeding profusely. I get into the car and land in a lab of two women. I'm apologizing and asking to be taken to the hospital. I'm a mess. One woman says my name and says we were classmates. I apologize that I did not recognize her. They are coming home from a family gathering. I jumped into a car. Oh, Jehovah's Witnesses. The driver says he's going to drive slowly past the place. We see the boxer dog run up to a house. A woman looking outside checking to see if the coast is clear, and she lets him inside. Ah, screw that witch. I call my mom and explain to her I am heading to the hospital. She laughs but then realizes that I am serious. We get there, I apologize for the blood on their car and get wheelchaired into the hospital. I have a nurse working on my arm and a doctor working on my leg. Wound wasn't deep enough for stitches, but the tooth got wiggled around when I tried getting him out. The bite mark is pouring out blood and it takes about 10 of those iodine needle things to clean it out. Then they do the other side of my leg. My mom gets there seeing tons of bloody bandages and stuff around me, and she freaks out and calls the cops. After I'm cleaned up and on some good pain meds, I talk to an officer. After he takes some pictures of my wounds for the case, I talk him through what happened. We then decided to go to the owner's place and check it out. When we get there, a cop knocks on the door, and the woman opens it. "Excuse me, ma'am. I have a gentleman here who was knocked into that ditch by a dog, living here, supposedly." The woman goes, "No, my dog Hannibal, literally his name, couldn't make that up, is an old dog who only has a couple teeth. No way he would hurt someone." Hannibal looks out and starts barking and snapping towards me. The woman drags him back. Policeman says, "Well, I've seen enough." The woman asks, "Are they pressing charges?" "Not sure." So I go home, think about it and decide that I want my hospital costs to be paid for, and then a little bit for the pain. I think the total was like $2,000. Hospital was about $1,250 of it. My mom's friend, who was a lawyer, said that I could sue for up to $5,000. I decline and then get asked if I want the dog put down. I have a dog of my own. I love dogs. I couldn't put the dog down. I decline on that also, knowing I don't want to have someone's animal put down if they love him. So fast forward the months, I am told the owner is wanting to go to court to argue against the charges. Excuse me? What? This is a clear-cut case. I have eyewitnesses, doctors that saw my injuries, pictures, a policeman who saw your dog go after me on sight. What the heck? So I go to the courthouse, and even though the woman was not supposed to talk to me until we were in the courtroom, she comes over to me and says, "I can't afford this. I'm so sorry. I have to fight it." Now I feel bad. I stay quiet and we go into the courtroom. I tell my side of it, the witnesses do too, and I feel bad the whole time thinking that this woman is about to lose everything. The policeman will show his findings the next day. I don't sleep all night. Next morning, a policeman comes by my place and asks to talk with me. I sit outside with him and tell him that I think I'm going to drop most of the charges because I feel bad for this old lady. The policeman says, "Not so quick. I did some digging." He shows me pictures of the house and a small backyard in the back. There are literally 6 dogs, old boxers, stuffed inside this tiny backyard. Oh heck no. It gets worse. She owns them and keeps them for a wealthy guy in New York City He sells them to people, not telling them that they are cooped up and aggressive as heck. I instantly think they are going to be put in dogfighting rings and such. I researched the price of a pure blood boxer and they can go from $500 to $3,000. She has 6 of them. Nonsense, she can't afford it. I'm sure she's had some other dogs before too. So, I am ready to do what needs to be done. Back to the courtroom. The judge says, "Yesterday I was told you were thinking about dropping the charges or at least lowering them." "Yes, Your Honor." The woman gets really excited. That is until this morning. I found out some unsettling news about animal neglect and animal abuse. The woman's face gets shocked and then glares at me. The policeman goes and explains to the judge how the woman had never let the dogs out in the 3 days he watched the house, fed them very little, and ignored them completely. Hannibal had gotten through the fence and bit me. The judge is obviously an animal lover. Gets furious at the woman. I end up getting hospital bills covered plus an additional $3,000. The woman loses all the dogs to the animal shelter, and I heard the couple had to be put down because they were so violent. The dude in New York got investigated, but I think he paid something that made it go away. The woman moved out of town after the local paper heard news of it. So let me tell you about this one time I was at the hospital and I witnessed the most absurd display of entitlement. I mean, we've all heard stories about Karens, but this was next level. It all started when this woman, let's call her Karen, strutted into the ER like she owned the place. She had this small scratch on her arm, probably from a cat or something, and she was making a huge fuss about it. I could tell it was minor, but the way she was acting, you'd think she'd been mauled by a lion. The ER was packed as usual. There were all sorts of people waiting, kids with fevers, an elderly man who looked like he was in pain, a young couple carrying their son, and the boy was about 7 and his leg, well, it was clearly broken, like really bad. His parents were rushing him in, their faces itched with worry and panic. Now this is where it gets crazy, because Karen sees his family and literally steps in front of them, blocking their way. "Excuse me," she says in the most condescending tone. "I was here first, and my injury is clearly more serious." The mom, trying to stay calm, says, "Please, our son needs immediate help." But Karen isn't having any of it. "No, I demand to be seen now. This is an emergency." I couldn't believe my ears. Was she for real? The kid is wincing in pain and she's worried about a scratch. The nurses who've been watching this scene unfold rush over to help the boy. They completely ignore Karen, which obviously makes her even more furious. She starts yelling at the nurses, calling them incompetent and threatening to get them fired. I am just standing there shocked, thinking this cannot be happening. As the nurses are trying to get the boy onto a stretcher, Karen actually tries to pull one of them away. "You need to treat me first," she screams. Out of nowhere, this big guy stands up. He's been sitting quietly with his wife, who looks like she's about to give birth, by the way. Turns out, he's an off-duty cop. He walks straight up to Karen, grabs her arm, and twists it behind her back. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for assault," he says as he slaps handcuffs on her. Karen is screeching like a banshee, demanding to be let go, saying she will sue everyone. The cop is unfazed. He calls for backup on his phone, explaining the situation. The whole ER is watching in stunned silence. The nurses are able to finally focus on the boy, who is now being rushed to a treatment room. His parents thank the cop profusely. Meanwhile, Karen is still making a scene even as the police arrive to take her away. She's yelling about how she's a victim and how everyone will regret this. I just stood there shaking my head. I couldn't believe someone could be so self-absorbed and entitled. It was a small cut, for crying out loud, and she was ready to delay urgent treatment for a child with a freaking broken leg over it. The ordeal seemed to end as quickly as it began. The ER returned to its usual buzz, the cop went back to his wife, and the nurses got back to work. From that day on, every time I see someone acting entitled, I think back to Karen and the broken leg incident. It's a story I've told numerous times, and each time people are just as shocked as I was that day in the ER. It's one of those tales that sounds too outrageous to be true, but trust me, I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. I live in this upper-class liberal town in Ohio called Bexley. Everyone in this town acts like complete self-righteous, narcissistic, entitled boneheads and feel that their crap smells better than everyone else's. People buy their kids new luxury cars when they hit 16. My neighbor got a brand new BMW for passing her driving exam. It sounds absurd, but it's just how Bexley is. One other thing about Bexley is that people from Bexley drive like the road is their private racetrack. They blew through stop signs, turn left on red, and park wherever their car can fit. I'm one of the few kids in Bexley who works a job to pay for his own college. Small rent to live at home. I'm 20 and 18 was the limit for my parents' car and car insurance. I'm grateful that my parents pay for my home food, heat and AC, electricity, phone bills, and so on. I get about 5 hours of sleep a night. So one day about a month ago, I decided to grab some sushi after the morning shift at work. This sushi place is right by a small private college was in Bexley called Capital University. I pull into the lot to find one empty space and I pull in. I get out, go into the sushi joint and spend maybe a half hour there. After a great lunch, I go back to see my car is blocked into space by a huge gray GMC Yukon. I was blocked in a spot as the parking spaces have those concrete bumps in front to separate the spots. I took a picture of the license plate just for reference. Well, I just waited patiently for the car owner to show back up because maybe there were no spots to park in at the time and my car just happened to be the one. As well as 2 other cars next to mine, of course. About 10 minutes later, a woman, maybe 35 years old, shows up and sees me in my car listening to music. She knocks on my window and tells me that I need to turn my music down and that us college kids are ruining her city. First of all, I go to Ohio State and not the capital. I look at her blankly as my music isn't that loud, and I'm wondering how she assumes I go to capital. She yells in my face, "Wake up, you spoiled brat!" Now, I had no clue who this crazy woman was, and I just turned my music off and shut the window and continued waiting for the car owner to move their car. Well, the woman pulls keys out of her purse and hops in her gargantuan GMC Yukon, and she screeches away, spattering mud on my car, which I paid for and paid to clean. I was a brat. This woman has the audacity to steal 3 cars in and complain that my music is too loud. I was 15 minutes late back to work that day. I'm never late. This was the first time I was late to work and I hope it was the last. I swore that if I ever saw her again, I would do to her what she had done to me. Well, fast forward a month later, I decided to grab some sushi after taking an exam. I went to the same sushi place in the same parking lot to see the same gray GMC Yukon taking up both of the last 2 spots in the lot. I'm on cloud 9 at this point and park right next to the driver's side of her car, making sure I was in a spot and that she couldn't get into her car. There was about 5 inches between my passenger door and her driver door. I leave my car, grab sushi to go, and patiently sit in my car. Well, what do you know? About 15 minutes later, the woman walks up to her double-parked car to see that I had sealed her in. I hear yelling that she is going to sue the person who did this. She sees me listening to music in the car that is blocking her from leaving. She approaches my car and demands that I move. I tell her, "You got into the spot, you can get out of the spot." She threatened to call the cops and I just laugh. I know the laws and even have a thin blue line flag bumper sticker on my car. She calls the cops and within 1 minute a cop shows up. I get out of my car and the woman starts yelling at the cop about how I had sealed her in. I told the cop that I was trying to park within the space. The cop looks at her car and then looks at mine and looks so disappointed after. The officer says to the woman to be happy I didn't have her car towed. He also said that she needs to move her car within the next minute or he will ticket her for parking illegally. Angrily, the woman climbs in her passenger door and she is struggling to reach the driver's side. She's throwing garbage out of her car in a fit, gets in, and moves her car over to drive. The cop knocks on her window and orders her to pick up her trash. She says to him, "Well, isn't that what garbage men do?" I'm trying so hard to keep a straight face, but I just start laughing hard because of her stupid remark. At this point, the woman looks at me and it seems she finally remembered who I was. Looking very pissed off, she sighs, gets out of her car, picks up her trash, and gets back into her car. The cop gets back into his car and tries to pull away. as a woman jerks her car out of the spot, nearly hitting the cop car, and speeds to the end of the lot where she stops at the red light. The woman, forgetting that she isn't the queen of the world and speeding is illegal, immediately gets pulled over. This lot is about 40 feet wide, and the woman is about 20 feet from me, so I can hear her. She starts yelling to the cop, "Reckless driving!" and I know exactly what's going on. I get back in my car, turn the music back on, and start thanking heaven for giving me this satisfaction. I pull away from the lot to have the greatest sense of fulfillment I have ever had in my life. In 2006, I found a great deal on a house on a local golf course. People bought it, lost their job, and the bank took it back. It had sat empty for a couple of years, so it needed a lot of updates. And like a lot of houses, when it was built, the minimum was done on the yard that now has a couple of years worth of grass, leaves, and brush growth, not counting the parts that were never cleared to start with. So after a 6-week interior remodel from Christmas till February, we finally moved in. As the weather warmed up in mid-March, I started working on the backyard. I was working with an axe, chainsaw, machete, and other similar tools to clean up the mess. I had started about 7 that morning and had a pile of brush big enough to hide a car under by lunch. I was also covered with dirt, mud, scratches, and sweating like a pig. So all morning golfers have been coming by. The majority of them never even noticed me. I was taking a breather, getting a drink, and I was standing maybe 10 feet from the cart path when 2 carts of older gentlemen, mostly likely in their 70s, pulled in and stopped. The 2 in the front had their balls close to where I was standing. The other 2 were a little further up the fairway. As I'm standing there watching one of the older guys start up a conversation. "Looks like you have done a lot of work today." I smiled and told him that yes, I have made progress but had a lot of work left to do. He got off his cart and got a beer out of the cooler on the back and asked me, "How do the folks you work for treat you?" I laughed and told him they are a bunch of jerks. He laughed and brought me a beer out of the cooler too. Nice old guy. His name was Robert. It became a routine over the next months. Every Saturday when I was out working doing the landscaping, I would see him, and they always talked to me. Well, one Wednesday in about the middle of May, I got off work and came home. I actually teach for a living, and I just grabbed a clean t-shirt and a pair of khaki shorts and hopped on the mower. I was about done when Robert and his friends came by. I pulled over by the cart path to say hi, and they stopped. Robert took a look at me and realized I actually lived here and didn't really work here. "So this is your place?" I laughed and said, "Yes, sir. I don't think many people who lived on a golf course have their own underbrushing and landscaping."
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.